It's 3 a.m. The house is completely quiet.
Hmm.
You're staring up at the ceiling fan spinning in the dark, and you are actively replaying a conversation you had at lunch like 6 hours ago.
Oh, yeah. The classic post-game analysis.
Right. You're lying there thinking, why did I use the word fine instead of good? Did they think I was being dismissive? I really should have smiled more when I said goodbye.
The mental cringe spiral. It's brutal.
It really is. And, most of us do this occasionally, maybe after a really bad date or a stressful job interview.
Sure.
But for some people, this isn't just a bad night's sleep. It's an entire operating system. It's how they navigate their existence every single day.
It is. And if that resonates with you or maybe with a partner or an employee you just can't quite figure out, you are definitely going to want to stay with us for this one.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're opening up the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. And we're bypassing the general stuff today. We're going straight into one of the most complex and honestly probably the most misunderstood archetypes in the entire deck.
Absolutely.
We are analyzing the SAFN, or as the report calls them, the Gentle Self-Examiner.
I love that we're starting here because on the surface, the SAFN seems so simple. They're gentle. They're the nice ones.
Right, the easygoing ones.
Exactly. But when you look at the actual data, the internal wiring of this profile, this is actually one of the most rigorous, intense profiles in the entire system.
So our mission today is to decode that intensity. We're going to break down their hidden energy matrix, look at why they're so prone to sudden burnout, and figure out why they make such incredible, yet often totally invisible leaders. But first, let's zoom out a bit. For the listener who thinks a personality test just means introvert versus extrovert.
Right? The usual category.
Yeah. Give us the 30-second primer on the Max Energy ME80 system. What are we actually looking at here?
Sure. So think of traditional tests, like a snapshot of your behavior. They tell you what you are, like you are loud or you are highly organized.
Okay.
The Max Energy ME80 system is more like a schematic of your engine. It maps energy flow. It tracks how you take in values, how you process emotions, how you make decisions, and finally, how you manifest action.
So it's not the paint job.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the paint job. It's about the mechanics of why you do what you do.
I really like that distinction. So we're looking at the transmission today.
Yeah.
Let's pull up the engine schematics for the Gentle Self-Examiner then. Let's start with their headline. The report gives them this hero section motto, and I read this 3 times because it felt, well, really heavy.
It hits you, doesn't it?
It does. It says, finds meaning between reflection and ache, turning regret into awakening.
It's almost poetic.
Between reflection and ache. That doesn't sound like a standard corporate personality type. What does that actually mean in practice?
It defines their core loop. A SAFN is hyper-aware. They don't just live through an experience, they record it.
Like a dash cam.
Exactly like a dash cam. And then they review the tape. They are constantly looking backward to examine their state within a relationship. But, and here's the ache part you mentioned, they aren't just remembering facts.
What are they looking for?
They're scanning for emotional dissonance. They're asking, where did the energy drop? Where did I fail to connect?
So they're essentially running a quality control check on their own life 24/7.
That is a perfect way to put it. And this leads to the most important dynamic you need to understand about them. The report defines their core dynamic as gentle outwardly, strict inwardly.
Unpack that for me. Because usually strict people are strict with everyone. Like if I'm hard on myself, I'm usually pretty hard on you too.
Right. That's the standard projection.
Yeah.
But not the SAF. That's the paradox here. To you, they appear accommodating, soft-spoken, maybe even a bit passive.
Yeah, easy to get along with.
But inside, they are a drill sergeant. They hold themselves to an impossibly high standard of responsibility. If a conversation goes sideways, they don't blame you. They blame their own performance. They always look inside first.
Wow. That sounds absolutely exhausting.
It really can be. But you have to remember, they view this reflection not as torture, but as the path to growth. They genuinely believe that if they can just analyze the mistake, they can fix it, and things will be better next time.
Ah, so that's turning the regret into awakening.
Exactly. That's the awakening mentioned in the motto.
Okay, so let's look at how they control their world. The report details their global vision and control mechanisms. It lists 4 energy pillars for the SAFN. We have fine perception, external expression, powerful advancement, and stable bearing. That is a really interesting mix.
Yes.
Fine perception totally fits the sensitivity we just talked about, but powerful advancement, that sounds kind of aggressive.
Well, it's not aggressive in a, dominate the room kind of way. It's about effectiveness. See, most people try to control their environment by changing other people.
Right, like, you need to stop doing that, or we need new rules.
Exactly. The SAFN has a totally different control philosophy. They seek, and the report calls this, adjustment space from within.
Adjustment space from within, meaning I will change myself to fit the room.
Or, I will adjust my output to stabilize the room. It's an entirely internal locus of control. They believe that by fine-tuning their own behavior, kind of like dialing in a radio frequency, they can clarify the signal for everyone else.
So they don't demand you change.
No, they change themselves to make your life easier, which explains why they are so pleasant to be around.
That makes a lot of sense. But I want to get under the hood now. You mentioned the energy matrix earlier, the engine components.
Yes, the 4 layers.
Right. The report breaks this down into IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation. I want to go through these one by one because the combinations here are honestly really counterintuitive.
They are. This is where the real nuance of the SAFN lives.
Okay, layer 1, the IP layer, or the inner value layer. This is the deepest part of the person, right? The bedrock.
Correct. This is where your core values live.
So the trait listed here for the SAFN is stable accumulation activation. Now, accumulation makes me think of hoarding. What exactly are they accumulating?
Data, experiences, feelings.
Mm.
Think of their value system not as a whiteboard that gets wiped clean every day, but as a library or a reservoir.
Okay.
They don't make impulsive value judgments. They build their worldview by slowly gathering information over time.
So they aren't flighty. They won't just wake up tomorrow and decide they hate their job because of one bad Zoom meeting.
Exactly. They are incredibly grounded. They need a mountain of evidence before they shift a core value. It's a reservoir mechanism. It takes a lot to fill it up and a lot to drain it. They are stable.
Okay, moving up to layer 2, the IQ layer,
Yeah.
this emotional activation layer. Now, this is where I got a bit confused reading the report. Usually we think IQ equals logic and EQ equals feelings. But the report says their emotional activation is driven by structure and principle judgment.
Right.
That sounds incredibly cold. Like, I will now schedule my emotions for 3 p.m.
It does sound cold, but it's actually highly protective. This is the big surprise with SAFNs. Their emotional triggers are wired directly to logic.
How so?
They don't have chaotic random outbursts. They get emotional when a principle is violated.
Can you give me a real-world example of that? Because principled emotion sounds a bit abstract.
Sure, imagine you're working with a SAFN. If you are just, annoying or loud in the office, they might not care. They can easily filter that out.
Right.
But if you violate a structural rule of fairness, say, you promised to help a junior colleague and then you flaked, leaving the team in a lurch that triggers them. They filter their feelings through a framework of what is right, what is the structure of this relationship.
So their anger isn't, I'm mad because I'm in a bad mood. Their anger is, I'm mad because you broke the code.
Precisely. It's a structured reaction.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't emotional roller coasters, they are emotional architects.
That is a crucial distinction. Okay, layer 3, the EQ layer, or the decision calculation layer. This is how they decide what to actually do.
Right.
And the trait here is emotional expression and release. Wait, so the logic was in the emotion layer, and now the emotion is in the decision layer.
It's a total flip, isn't it? It's fascinating. When a SAFN is calculating a decision like, how do I reply to this email? Or should I take this new job?
Mm-hmm.
They aren't just looking at spreadsheets.
What are you looking at?
They are actively processing the emotional weight of the decision. They don't suppress the feeling to make the choice. They actually use the feeling as the choice mechanism.
So they aren't robots. They are processing the humanity of the decision.
Yes, they're asking, how will this land? What's the emotional cost to the team? Does this feel right? The decision always has heart in it.
And finally, layer 4, the manifestation layer. This is what the world actually sees. The trait is energy released, outward impact, action, manifestation.
This is the kicker. Because despite all that internal accumulation and the structural judging and the emotional calculating,
Right, that heavy internal processing.
the result is action. They don't just sit and ruminate forever in a dark room.
Ah.
They execute.
They ship the product.
They ship. Remember, powerful advancement from their control mechanisms. They take all that internal complexity and turn it into an external result.
Mhm.
They are doers.
So we have this engine that is constantly recording, analyzing, and adjusting.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the deep analysis section of the inner traits.
Yes.
It highlights one trait above all others, continuous self-reflection. We called it the instant replay earlier.
The engine is always humming.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though. As I read this part, I kept thinking, this just sounds like anxiety. Like, it
Yeah.
sounds like neuroticism. If I'm constantly asking, did I do that right? Was it okay? Am I not just deeply insecure?
That is the million-dollar question. And the report tackles this head-on because it is the single biggest misconception about SAFNs. The expert analysis is very clear here. This continuous review is not self-negation.
Okay.
It is not stemming from a place of, I am inherently bad.
Then where's it coming from? Why do it?
It comes from a high sense of responsibility. They value the relationship so much that they want to optimize it. They genuinely believe that constant correction moves things toward gentler, safer directions.
So it's not I'm terrible, it's I can make this better.
Exactly. It's the difference between a student who studies because they're terrified of failing and a master craftsman who sands a piece of wood because they want the finish to be absolutely perfect.
That's a great analogy.
The SAFN is the craftsman.
Yeah.
They are trying to get closer to the truth of the interaction.
Okay, I buy that distinction. But there is always but even a craftsman can sand the wood until there's nothing left. There has to be a shadow side to this.
There is, and it's dangerous. The shadow trait we need to reveal here is over-internalization.
Taking it all in.
Taking it all on. The danger is that because they are so good at finding their own faults, they tend to internalize structural problems as personal shortcomings.
Give me a workplace scenario for that.
All right, imagine a company with a completely toxic culture. Unrealistic deadlines, a yelling boss, zero resources. A different personality type looks at that and says, this place is a dumpster fire. I'm out.
Right. It's not me, it's you. I quit.
But the SAFN looks at that exact same situation and says, I'm not working efficiently enough. I need to communicate better. I need to absorb this friction so the rest of the team doesn't feel it.
Oh, man. That is a massive trap. They just take the blame for the broken system.
They become the shock absorbers for everyone else's dysfunction. They suppress their own needs to fix the friction. And because they are, as we said, gentle outwardly, they aren't complaining in the break room. They are smiling and working harder.
Until what?
Until they hit the bearing threshold.
The bearing threshold. That sounds ominous.
It's the breaking point. The SAFN accumulates pressure in that inner value reservoir we talked about. But reservoirs have physical limits.
Right.
When a CFN hits that limit, they don't usually explode in a screening match.
Yeah.
They do something much scarier. They detach.
They ghost.
Complete and utter withdrawal. They might resign on a Tuesday morning with absolutely no notice, or end a 5-year relationship over breakfast.
Just like that.
Just like that. And the people around them are always shocked. They say, but you seemed fine. You were handling everything so well.
Because the SAFN never showed the cracks.
Right. They were fixing the cracks internally until the wall just fell down. This is a really tragic dynamic, honestly. They try so hard to keep the connection safe that they end up destroying it by burning themselves out.
That is a huge insight for any managers or partners of SAS listening right now. If your SAFN person goes quiet, worry.
Yes. Silence is not contentment for them.
Yeah.
Silence might be the countdown.
Let's talk about their social relationships next, because this shock absorber tendency definitely shows up in friendships too. The report calls their social style fine-grained repair.
Yes. This is why we call them the menders. To the outside world, they are the perfect friend. They are excellent listeners. They're the ones you call when you're falling apart, because you know they won't just offer cheap platitudes. They will actually think deeply about your problem.
They're the ones who naturally fill the awkward silences at dinner parties too.
Exactly. They are actively managing the harmony of the room. If there is tension, they defuse it. If someone feels left out, they bring them in. They are constantly bridging gaps.
But I'm guessing this leads right back to the same problem. Who is bridging the gap for them?
Usually, no one. The report warns that excessive yielding leads to their position being entirely overlooked. They step back so often to make room for others that eventually people just stop seeing them. They become part of the furniture.
That's a really lonely place to be.
It is. The relationship looks stable from the outside. No fighting, everything is smooth, but it loses its internal balance. The SAFN is doing all the emotional heavy lifting. They're rowing the boat for two people, smiling the whole time so the other person doesn't worry about the current.
Okay, that is a heavy image, but I want to pivot here because we don't want to just paint them as victims of their own empathy.
Definitely not.
These traits, this high awareness, this incredible ability to self-correct, these are also massive assets, especially in a professional context. So let's talk about their commercial value. If I'm a CEO, why do I want a SAFN on my payroll?
You want them because they possess what the report calls high awareness correction power.
Make the business case for me.
In a corporate world obsessed with move fast and break things, the SAFN is the one who ensures things actually work. Because they are so incredibly good at post-action review, they catch the subtle deviations in processes that the visionaries completely miss.
So while the sales team is popping champagne over a new deal, the SAFN is the one realizing, hey, we promised a delivery date we physically can't meet, and if we don't fix our supply chain right now, we lose this client in 3 months.
Exactly. They are the invisible ballast for team cohesion. They don't rush to the front of the room with flashy PowerPoints to prove themselves. They quietly optimize the details to ensure the systems last long-term. They are strictly focused on quality.
The report actually lists some specific career fields where they thrive, and customer relationship management, or CRM, was right at the top.
Makes perfect sense. CRM is all about reading the other person's state and adjusting. SAFNs establish incredibly sticky, deep trust because the client actually feels heard. They aren't just selling, they are relating.
Education and guidance was another recommended field.
Because they are so patient, they can break down complex ideas and provide targeted understanding to help someone else grow. They make incredible mentors because they don't just lecture, they tune into the student.
And quality control.
Naturally. If you need zero defects, you want a gentle self-examiner. They will find the subtle flaw that everyone else walked right past because their brain is literally wired to scan for what isn't right.
And finally, long-term collaborative teams.
They are the glue. They're the ones who remember birthdays, who notice when a colleague is secretly stressed, and who keep the group cohesion high over long, difficult projects.
So they really are the unsung heroes of sustainability. They make sure the company doesn't implode from its own lack of attention to detail.
Yes. But, and I know I sound like a broken record here, only if they manage that shadow side. A burnt-out SAFN is useful to no one.
Which brings us to the conclusion. We've looked at the wiring, the shadow blind spots, and the superpowers. If I am a SAFN, or if I love one, what is the golden sentence here? What is the one thing I need to take away from this report?
The report sums it up beautifully. It says, SAFN's value isn't one-time perfection, but continuous correction.
Continuous correction. That's a real shift in mindset. It's not about being perfect instantly. It's about the process.
Right. And the mechanism to make that process sustainable is boundaries. The report is very explicit about this. SAFNs must learn to maintain boundaries. When they do, that immense power of reflection transforms. It stops being something that consumes their energy and it turns into maturity and strength.
So the difference between a constantly anxious SAFN and a powerful SAFN is simply the ability to say no, and this isn't my fault.
It's the ability to stop the replay tape and say, I did my best. That is enough.
That is the shift from self-criticism to self-mastery.
Precisely.
So here is a provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. We started this deep dive asking if you replay conversations in your head.
We did.
If you identified with the gentle self-examiner today, ask yourself this next time you're doing that at 3 a.m. Are you reflecting to learn, or are you reflecting to punish yourself?
That is the question.
Because one leads to awakening and the other just leads to the ache. The difference is your boundaries.
Well said.
This has been a truly fascinating look into the SAFN. We want to thank the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report for providing these insights. It's rare to find a system that goes this deep into the nuance of why.
It really is. And if this sparks something in you, if you want to see your own engine schematics, you can visit their official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
You can also search on Facebook for Max Energy EQ or Met Energy U. There is a whole world of energy mechanics to explore over there.
It's a fantastic tool for understanding yourself and the people around you better.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care.